more to do. All right, we're joined by Bundeep Singh Rangar. He's chairman of the Indian consultancy firm IndusView. Thank you very much indeed for coming in this morning. Let's start then with the Wall Street Journal and Ireland unexpectedly declining 1.2%. The Economist got it wrong.
As they usually do in some cases here. Nobody predicted a big recession there, did they? I guess the real challenge is government debt. It really is high. Ireland's got about 80 billion to pay off, and they've got this capitalization cost of about 35 billion. So the cost of borrowing is higher, and their ability to seek funding from the IMF or the EU like Greece did is now going to be one big question mark and one big thing that people will pontificate over.
Let's move on to the situation with the Yuan and the claims by the US that it's up to 40% undervalued. We've talked about this a lot throughout the year, and China has let it appreciate, and the feeling is that it will let it appreciate in its own good time.
Well, I guess that's the good time is the good question, right? What is the pace of that evaluation? So since June, when they first announced they're going to free up the yuan a little bit, it's risen about 2%. But historically, it took 2005 to 2008, a good 3 to 4 years, when it rose 20%. So any kind of corresponding 20% increase now in a shorter period of time is just not palatable. And the question is Obama pushing for this because he wants China to be more competitive, or because of 10% unemployment rate in the US he needs to tackle?
I think I know which one I'd put my money on.
Going on to the Financial Times now, and boardroom battles and the promotion of another investment banker to the top job, it looks very much like.
I guess Bob Diamond's setting a trend there with Barclays, isn't he? Look, I mean, I think there was some talk about whether he'd become chairman or not. I don't think he's, the report about him quitting if he didn't is probably not true. But it does kind of lead to a question of where they're going to grow from here, because clearly banks and investment banks, with the whole separation of the two, growth will still come from non-traditional sources for banks, and you've got the casino, and you've got the utility, and you've got to merge the two. So let's get a casino operator to run a utility.
Do you think, though, by following almost the example of Barclays and having someone who is the head of the investment bank, is kind of setting the banks up for that battle, particularly with the UK government, who do want to split the banks, putting the banks in a stronger position? Completely
agree, because if you look at the top 3 banks in the world today, going back to our talk about China, they're Chinese. So if the Western and particularly British banks want to stay competitive, they have to become more investment banking oriented in some ways and prevent the government from splitting them up in ways that will be damaging to them worldwide.
Do you think they really will decide to split the banks? There's so much pressure from the banking lobby, and the banking lobby, the financial services, accounts for so much GDP.
I think there'll be pressure. I just don't think they will. I think that's just going to be too much, like you said. This is London's a financial center. If they split the banks up, that's the linchpin for everything else around here.
Yeah. Right, let's go on to The Guardian now, which highlights the classic case of sibling rivalry, the competition between the Miliband brothers. It is suggesting that there's a possibility now that Ed, the younger of the two, could scrape by and get into the position of the new Labour leader, and David apparently saying he would work for Ed if he loses.
Nice Shakespearean story here, right? Sibling rivalry, quest for leadership. Look, I mean, I think if he said anything to the contrary, it would probably not serve him well in the event that his younger brother won. However, I think by saying that, he's also kind of conceded a little bit here. So, you know, if he had taken the position saying, well, I'm going to win, period, he might have got more votes. But I guess this is a good sign of where the vote might go.
Indeed, we'll find out all regarding that tomorrow.
Do you think brothers can work together like that when they've been locked in such a battle?
I have a younger brother, thankfully. We've never been that competitive in the same field. But, I mean, yeah, sure.
Could you work with if he was?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, especially with different personalities. I think if you've got very complementary personalities, it works.
Oh, that's good to hear.
That's nice.
The Independent now, and the Queen apparently tried to use state poverty fund to heat Buckingham Palace. Now, we've all got rising fuel bills, haven't we?
Do you think she qualifies for a winter fuel payment?
Well, I think we need to read further actually into this.
It's amazing what the recession can make people do, right? I guess the question is, was it somebody within the Queen's ambit who went and asked for this grant, given the fact that their cost of utilities across the Queen's holdings are about £1 million a year? This is £60 million for hospitals and low-income families being used for the Queen. Doesn't kind of add up, does it?
Now, finally, Gulf News is reporting, of course, about the Commonwealth Games, but being rather optimistic and saying they're going to proceed as scheduled, and reporting that the problems seem to have been well and truly dealt with by the Indians.
This is such a controversial one because this really ought to have been tackled way at the beginning. Right when they awarded this, they should have set some really strict guidelines, service level agreements when you set this up. And this is part of what we do as a business. And you really have to look at a private sector involvement that's greater. You can't leave it to the public sector. You got to have massive punitive sanctions if things don't work out. And yes, they can try and fix it now because people will work 24 hours and you'll double the workforce to get things done. But we shouldn't have even come close to this. This should have been such a stellar example of...
It's very political, though, because the head of the Australian Olympic Committee has said it should never have been awarded to India.
That probably stretching it too far. I think it could have easily been awarded, but with strict guidelines for performance and for deadline management. I think that's what really is missing. And quality. We don't want things falling on people's heads, do we?
Okay, Bundeep Singh Rangar from the Indian consultancy firm IndusView. Thank you very much indeed for coming in and seeing us so early this morning. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Well, that's all from Sally and from me for now. Thanks very much for being with us.
Goodbye.